Welcome back for another book review. Today we are talking about Wicca Made Easy, Awaken the Divine Magic Within You by Phyllis, and I don't really know how to say this last name. It looks like Curott, but I'm probably mispronouncing it. The brief description of this book is that it's an introduction to Wicca with some shamanic techniques, a little bit of just eclectic Wicca, but it does really center around Wicca specifically, and definitely for beginners. I would rate this book at a 3-star. While her writing voice is good, the content's pretty iffy for me. I found myself disagreeing with the author for the association specifically with the gods and goddesses. The ones that I know, I was really questioning why she was putting such associations on them. It didn't make sense. Some I'm whatever, it doesn't, I guess, kind of. But a lot of them, it's okay, you put that one there, but why not this one here? We'll go over it in the, other notes at the end of the video, but I only picked a handful of them, but that part really made me question the author. I'm if I'm questioning this part, how many other parts do I need to be questioning? And several sections in this book would pose a question or a theory, but then it was really never addressed. And just overall, the book, it's not the worst thing ever written. If you happen to get a copy of this, you might like it. I just personally I don't know. I lost a lot of trust in the author as I was going. Most of the information is pretty generic. You're going to find it in all of the other books. A lot of it's just the same information rewritten by somebody else. But I don't know that I would really recommend this book. I would say the intended audience for this book is definitely beginner Wiccans. And really, if you're a beginner witch, potentially as well, but just know it's going to have an emphasis on Wicca specifically. And it's going to have really the emphasis is going to be towards eclectic Wicca, not traditional, and a little bit more of the shamanic practices than you'll find in some books. Would I buy this book? No. It isn't worth it. There was nothing in here that made it stand out to the point that I'm yeah, I would like to have this to look back on at a future date. The information is I found it in other books, and again, losing trust in the author, there's not much point in me personally going out and buying the book. Now let's move on to the other notes. So the first one comes from page 69. Many of us don't recognize how drained of vitality we've become. We're benumbed to the constant bombardment of bad news and the deliberately addicting clicks, likes, and responses of social media. And spend most of our lives indoors literally suffering from nature deficit disorder with anxiety, depression, and attention disorders. That's literally not how that works, in the slightest, at all. So, anxiety, depression, attention disorders, like ADHD and ADD, that's not how that works, at all. I'm really curious why people think that they should just include that kind of thing, what editor and publishing house, which granted, okay, the publishing house for this book was Hay House, which is Louise Hay's publishing house, and she's the one who did You Can Heal Your Life, and, it kind of tracks that, of course, it's going to be that you can just fix yourself with positive thinking and such. But, I can guarantee you, ask anybody who has, mild, moderate, severe of any of these issues, go outside, just sit by a tree. Is it going to fix your anxiety? No. What? Same with depression and attention disorders. There's not, the things are not necessarily related. They, it might just be circumstantial, but we just need to not just dump disorders and be oh my God, it's because you're not outside. It's a problem of not being outside. Just go in nature, it'll be fine. That's not how that works. Depression is not cured by going and sitting in a forest. Anxiety is not cured by going and sitting in a meadow. And attention disorders are not fixed by going for a hike. They might help. There's definitely studies to say that going out in nature can help these things, but you're not suffering from a nature deficient disorder by having anxiety and depression and attention disorders. It just felt like such a really stupid line to add. It's super insensitive, and really I expect more from publishing houses and just authors in general to not write such things, but then also, we're going to get to later points that it just kind of fits the bill, that it's just a modern kind of, I don't know, it's society's changing. We're starting to be a little more sensitive towards mental health, but it's been a thing in like the pagan and Wiccan and witchcraft community for a while that it's like, oh, well, all things can be fixed if you go outside. And it's like, it doesn't. And we're trying to be a little more aware, but there's certain things that just pop up all the time, and this is one of them. If you thought that was a reason to not love this book, this next one is like a little more personal, but like why? So on page 130, she has Hel listed, and if you don't know who Hel is from the Norse pantheon. She is Loki's daughter, and she is the ruler of the underworld, which is not a bad thing. It's kind of similar to Hades and his realm in that she takes in all the dead. It doesn't matter how you died, how old, sick, whatever, she takes everybody. And, you know, in the Norse mythology, Odin and Freya are going to pick from, like, the hand-selected of, like, the warriors to help with Ragnarok. The basic summary. Hel has a lot of other associations in modern context, but that's her main role that is, like, proven in the old text and how the ancients believed. And then modernly we add other associations, like she gets lumped in as a crone for whatever stupid reason. I don't get it, but I mean, I do, but I just don't agree with it. Because death happens at all ages. You don't get to just be old, but whatever. So the whole thing set aside, Hel is listed on page 130 as a warrior goddess and a justice goddess. Not rebirth, which was like rebirth and healing, which was the section above, which I feel like would make more sense. Death deities typically are associated with rebirth, because, you know, reincarnation and such. But no, like, how is she listed as a warrior? Because even in Ragnarok, all she does is open the gate. That's it. She's not fighting. And, like, she doesn't pick the warriors either. Like, the people who die in battle are picked by Freya. So why is Freya not listed there? And, like, she's not necessarily for justice either. They have a different god for that in particular. And it's, you know, like, you could argue so many other deities. Why is she listed? Like, justice, I don't even know if you could really argue it, though. She's a death deity. How is she stepping in for justice? She's just there to collect the dead and watch over them. That's her job. At most, maybe justice within her realm, because there are discussions of, like, her having different sections depending on, like, how you lived your life, and, like, truly awful, horrible people are, like, sacrificed in, like, a specific area of her realm. But that's about it for justice. And again, with the warrior, she's not. Like, that's just not a thing she really does. Again, the most she does is, like, she opens the gate and lets the dead roam at Ragnarok. That's about it. Moving along, we have got page 208. Whether your spell produces the goal you are envisioning or not, the real goal at the heart of all spells is to find the divine within every situation and within yourself. I don't really agree with that one, like, at all. Because that's the answer to the question of why doesn't your spell work? And it's like, that didn't answer it, literally at all. Why didn't my spell work? Well, don't you know that all spells are just to find the divine within the situation and yourself? And you're like, okay, but it didn't work. So what does that mean? Does that mean that I did not, in fact, find the divine? Like, it's such a cop-out answer that didn't actually answer the question at all. You posed the question. You were the author. What? Like, and that's also not the reason for spells. Like, I'm not trying to find the divine in every situation and within myself. Like, that's not how I view a spell in the slightest. That's usually not how spell work is presented anyways. Like, that was just, I didn't agree with it at all. Moving along, we have got 215, and we're talking about tools, specifically the cauldron, an ancient Celtic symbol of the goddess Caradwyn, the regenerative womb of the goddess, and blah, 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 blah. So, also, no, like, cauldrons are found literally everywhere. That was one of the first major, like, cooking tools in every society, I'm pretty confident. They might not call it a cauldron, but the general gist of a pot over fire cooking things, it's found just about everywhere. And also, like, it's not the womb of the goddess. Like, even in Celtic mythology, you have the cauldron of, and I always say his name wrong, Dagda. That's what Google says it's how it's pronounced, so we're running with that. But yeah, his cauldron also is not the womb, because, like, he's a god, and it has a different purpose entirely. And then if we jump back over to the Norse myths, there's a lot of cauldrons, and, like, there's, like, the cauldron that contained, like, the inspirational mead, and, like, cauldrons don't need to be, like, obsessed. Cauldrons can be for other things. Like, if you look outside of the Wicca mindset, the cauldron stands for, like, not the uterus. Like, ever. Like, if you look at the old myths, never really is the cauldron the womb. It is so many other things. It's usually used, as a cauldron would be, it's used for making a potion. Caradwin's cauldron is not the womb. It's where she uses her magic. She just puts a bunch of ingredients in there. She does her spell for a year and a day. It's not her uterus. Her uterus ends up being used in that mythology because, like, in that specific myth, she ends up ingesting the dude and then becomes pregnant with him. And, like, it's a really fun story if you decide to check into it. But, like, that's not what her cauldron is. Her cauldron was used as a spell tool. And then, again, Dagda, in this particular instance, his cauldron is also not a uterus. It's to put food in. And, again, there's the cauldron filled with mead. I'm pretty sure it was a cauldron. It might have been a horn. But I feel like there was definitely myths in the North. I'm looking into them more to get the specifics. But, like, there's plenty of cauldrons mentioned. Never is it really the, like, uterus. I don't know why Wicca is so utterly obsessed with the uterus. It's, like, it gets so old to read about how sacred the woman's body is, which is one of the things this book mentioned pretty frequently. Like, it was just, like, random toss-outs of, like, oh, well, it's great that the moon is associated with women and your body and, like, the two major things in life where you start your period and then you end your period, and then pregnancy and childbirth and blah, blah, blah. Oh, and then also men. You could do your own thing, too. And then, like, also the non-binary and the trans, like, I guess you could do your own thing. Figure it out. And it's like, why do you have to put the female body on such a pedestal? Because, again, the pendulum has swung so far the opposite direction of where it's been. I personally, in my practice, am really aiming towards that central neutral ground that, like, a couple organs are not, like, revolutionary. I feel like probably in the next, like, century or so, we could probably create a baby in a lab. Like, it's an inevitable, like, science is moving that way. They have been able to make a child without a man being involved at all. Inevitably, I'm sure we're going to find some science to make it so that you don't necessarily have to procreate in the olden ways. They probably will continue, but still, like, you don't have to. And it's one organ. It's one part of life. I know it's great. I know it's sacred. I know I have a chip on my shoulder about it, but I don't know why we have to be so utterly obsessed about it. Like, it just is so obnoxious when that's all Wicca is. That's one of the reasons that I don't consider myself Wiccan. I don't worship the uterus. It's just a tool of the body, the same as your lungs that everybody has, your kidneys, your spine. Like, there are other parts of your body that I feel like are way more magical than the uterus. It's just, I don't love how, like, uterus focused a lot of these books are. So that was just one of those points that I'm like, I went on such a tangent for, but we know where I stand. The last point, I surprisingly ended up having one good point from this book. I really didn't anticipate it. It was right at the very end of the book. On page 220, she has one of her, like, practice exercise things to do, and it's practice unnaming. And in it, you're supposed to, like, it's really more, I feel like it's more shamanic, personally, but you're supposed to, like, deconstruct a concept. Her example is, like, a tree. Why do we call it a tree? What is a tree? What is the purpose of a tree? And, like, you list the things around it without, like, just the name of it. And, like, you really, like, experience the thing on its own without, like, preconceived notions of it and whatever, and just, like, experience it as it is. And I'm like, that is so great. Could we apply that to other things? Like, specifically, I love this idea of, like, the unnaming and deconstructing gender, especially, like, when we place it on the sun and the moon, because, like, even in this book, she's like, oh, well, the sun is masculine and goes off about the usual Wiccan things for the sun, but then he's like, oh, but, like, also, like, some people put the sun as, like, the goddess and the moon as the god, which most of the, like, ones that I'm interested in do that. Like, the sun is associated with Sol and with Brigid, both goddesses. The moon is with Mani, and I cannot remember the Celtic one. I want to say it starts with an O, but it's a god, not the goddess. And so, like, Yet we, especially like Wicca, is like really obsessed with using like a lot of Celtic things, but only when it fits their narrative. Because like if you look at the source material, you look at the way it was believed originally, it doesn't always fit nicely into the little boxes where the sun is the god, the moon is the goddess. There's a lot of overlap in things, and it's like, why not deconstruct the idea of gender that we put onto like astral bodies, you know? Why does the moon have to be with the goddess? Because the full moon affects everybody. You have ever talked to anybody who works in like emergency services, like they will tell you the full moon is here because chaos ensues. Like it's just a known thing. It doesn't matter, young, old, like woman, not, somewhere in between, don't matter. Full moon, y'all are going to be crazy. And they have seen it. They see the people of all ages, of all the things walk in those doors. Chaos. The full moon affects everybody. It doesn't have to be just a woman because your cycle tends to line up. It doesn't always. So I just deconstruct that, use that for bigger things. And also you could totally apply it to the seasons and the tools. Like as I was reading that, I was like, I could just, how could we remove gender from everything? Because it just, I don't love it. I just feel like we could have an entire religion that doesn't need to have that in there. We could just use something different that applies to everybody. Can you tell where my soapboxes are from this book? I have a few. I have a few that I'm a diehard, like, gonna argue to the ends of the earth for. So anyways, I would love to know your thoughts on this book in the comments down below. Other people have argued that this book really wasn't that great either. Like, the reviews were not super hot for this one. I think the average rating was about a 3-star. So I would love to know your thoughts on this one in the comments down below. Huge thank you, as always, to my patrons. If you want to support me and get access to a bunch of content, it is patreon.com/nightwillowcrafts. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I post every single day. And until next time, thank you so much for watching, and blessed be.